So this panel is called The Other Side of the Table, Lessons from Creators, and it's all about how to table at conventions, what it's like to be on the POV of the other side, because it's one thing to attend the show and walk around and have that freedom to come and go and leave, and then it's another thing to be behind the table from, this show is from 11 to 5, how to deal with that all day long, lunch, even if you want to ask questions about lunch breaks and tabling, or even just overall how the process of comics get made from the process of having it physically be on the table. Because it's a process. The whole idea of coming up with everything, and then you feel like it could be done. You're like, oh, I completed everything. But that's only half, in my mind, that's only half of just like having it. The other half is having it be available to people and having them be able to access it. So just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I'm Carolyn Belefski. I did graduate from VCU, so I'm an alumni. I have a communication arts and design degree, and I've been using it effectively. So that's good to know that you can use your degree after you graduate. I started actually at VCU doing a comic strip called Curls, and this was published in the Commonwealth Times newspaper. And then for a while I collected all of them, because as you know, the newspaper is usually printed in black and white and occasionally does color. So my comic strip is kind of like the Wizard of Oz in terms of it starts out in black and white, and then magically some color appears throughout some of it, and then it does get to be basically full color. So almost like how the time transition in the Wizard of Oz, it's like, oh, now we can do color film. So it's like, now we went from newspapers to like, now we can do color. So that this shows like a whole journey of the time transition, and also you can see how everything got better over time just from drawing and that experience. And sometimes you can look back on your past drawings and be like, but then if you didn't go through that, you wouldn't be where you are now. So I do think it's important to show that. Some people are like, oh, do you ever cringe? Because I was doing this stuff when I was a teenager. If you think about that, that's like, hey, you're a teenager. You're making your own comic strip. That's pretty cool. So I don't regret it, but I can do better now. So it's good to see the progress. And then just real quick, this is the new book, Black Magic Tales, and you can actually get it here or at Velocity Comics in Richmond. It's the adventures of Roxy and Dean. It's all about two people trying to be the most famous people on the planet by committing fun heists. This is a very fun book. And then my side is Carlos the Los, and I'll have him do a little intro.
Sure. I'm pretty much a social media personality known as the Los. I've been attending a lot of conventions. I've worked, it feels like every bit of any convention out there, from big conventions to small conventions. Currently doing social media networking for a group called Super Art Fight, which is a live competitive art group. We do shows basically at any convention in Baltimore, DC, and Virginia. Basically been surviving the current social media chaos that is now. And I've tabled before. I've helped tabled many guest artists at many conventions, big and small. Basically kind of a weird utility knife of weird talents and random advice.
Yeah, and you've been pretty well connected with everything.
Yeah, you go to enough conventions, you meet a lot of people, and your network kind of grows exponentially, because everyone knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And if you go to, say, 10 cons a year, you're basically going to know basically everyone that runs every con, north and south.
And it is important to know who is running it. When I came into the room, I said, oh, hello, are you the room monitor? Like, I know how it works and stuff like that. Introduce yourself. It doesn't have to be hard, but I feel like making those connections are very helpful. So just to go over like a few conventions in the area. So obviously this is Rice at VCU. There's also, the closest thing that I can think of to this is Small Press Expo, but it's like a lot larger version of Rice. And it's in one big hall in a hotel in Bethesda, Maryland. So that usually happens in the fall time, like around October. So be on the lookout for that. And I think it's worth, maybe 2.5 hours from here to go up. I think it's worth it. And you see a lot of people coming from other places too, not just locally. There's a lot of other cartoonists you'll meet in like Portland, from Ohio, from all over, and they'll come. And that's a good resource. And then another one that's a little bit different, not as indie scene, but more like superhero comics and / indie, is Baltimore Comic-Con, which is also around the fall time. And this past year, actually, SPX in Baltimore landed on the same weekend. So it doesn't happen all the time, but, and it wasn't like any bad vibes or anything. It just happened to be that those were the times that they got for the venues, locations. So that one is also a good show. Not as much independent comics, but they do have an artist alley. And I do think maybe after like a year of doing smaller shows, if you do want to do Baltimore, I like that show too. And it's more about comics. It's not about like flashiness of bringing in celebrities, although they do that as well. But they've only been doing that recently. But the show is mostly about comics. Other shows we do are New York Comic Con, which is a really big one, and I don't suggest doing that right off the bat because it's very expensive, and New York in general is very expensive just to physically be there. But it is a great show, and I love doing it. And it's not necessarily about comics; it's more about just being there. You'll find different shows. There's a reason for each show. Some of it is really to like sell product and get people out there and people will buy things. And then there's other shows where you might not do as well in sales and it's more about being there. And New York Comic Con would be one of those shows because it's so expensive to do coverage of that. So that's almost like, I would advise doing that a little later in a career if you want to go big or go home type deal, if you want to be noticed at New York. But I would advise doing the smaller shows first. What other shows are there? There's a lot of small shows.
Every city seems to just have a zine fest happening kind of like once a year. Check your local town, city, ask if they have a zine fair or a zine fest. They always have like a catchy name for it, like Rice. I know St. Louis has Slice, which I was very jealous I didn't come up with. They put a big pizza theme for it.
That's awesome.
I wanted that. And also this upcoming Saturday is DC Scene Fest, which I will also be doing. Not tabling, just like the vibes.
Yeah.
But yeah, every kind of like small town or local city just has like a zine scene happening. You just gotta kind of find it.
And the great thing about the Zine Fest is they're very affordable. Sometimes you can get a table for like $20. And at that point, that's worth it, to be there and show your material. And also at those, I don't think you need to have a glossy final product. You can just Xerox and staple your comics and no one's gonna frown upon that at all. They're gonna think that that's pretty cool, that's how you make a zine. But there are some of the newer shows, it's almost like, it feels like you have to have this glossy, spot varnish, special edition book, which is awesome too. But the fact that you're actually able to do stuff like that pretty easily now is awesome. Because you can just send out a PDF with all that material marked up on it and get it in like a month later at your doorstep. So the fact that you're able to do that now is pretty cool. But back 15 years ago, it was more Xerox and staple. I'm open to taking questions like throughout this whole thing because this is a Q&A type deal. And if you guys have a question, like honestly, just throw up your hand because I can keep talking, but I want to know what you want to know about. But we got a question here.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. So, like one of the things that I'm kind of dealing with a really short graphic memoir that I have been working on is finding the right show or the right market for it because people say, oh, you should take it to Zine Fest, but then it has a ridiculous production value that I didn't really think through, wherein like the cover is linoleum cut and then like there's paper marbling, and then you don't want to really sell that for $15. But then the Zine Fest people, of course, for good reasons, they're not in the market for however much that would be. So is it better to keep it like in its original state and then just target more like art book things, or is it better to make a lower cost edition that you could sell like a zine fest or something,
Mhm.
knowing like that it's different audiences for target these different events.
Yeah, so are you open to making a lower cost one?
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
you just want to get it out and get
Yeah.
people to read it. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, like, I could have a gold foil, or carrot, whatever, and only make like 50 of them, and then probably no one's gonna buy it as
Yeah.
much, and then it's like, no one's reading it. So, I would suggest having like a more basic version of it, just to get it out there, to get people to have it. And if you do want to go and have special linoleum cut, and maybe have it as a limited edition of X amount, a limited, I don't know what number you want to aim for, 25, 50.
Yeah.
And, have it be like something special, and number it, have it as like a signed artist piece. So it is like, man, you have to get a certificate of authenticity for this, like make it
Yeah.
special.
Okay.
And then obviously make that cost higher. You might not be able to find as many people to like be willing to buy something
Yeah.
like that if they don't know who you are already. So that's what I would do, to do two different versions of it.
Yeah.
And then also as far as going to the shows, I'm a proponent of just like going to as many as you can afford. And obviously, like we were saying, the zine fests are affordable, the small comic shows are affordable.
Yeah.
Any of the big comic conventions that are run by like Reed Pop or some big company or C2E2 and all those, they're gonna be expensive. So,
Also, you could just attend shows, like you don't have to have a table. Most of my connections I've done has been just going to shows, like it's been sharing either information I know, like just getting to know the crowd and to get to know people around. For what you probably want to do is maybe do like a chapter 1, like a small zine of that. And that's like an intro piece. It's like serving that like free, like a nice slice of something, of what the full book will be. And if someone's interested, they'll buy the book. Like you have to kind of like find a hook. And usually something smaller, cheaper, something that, is more inviting than having to buy a book that you don't know anything of. And if you're tabling, you have to do a lot of marketing. So if you are bringing kind of like samples at a zine fest, maybe you can do some trades, maybe people get interested in it. So it is something where it is really hard to kind of like, do I want to invest in that, or do I want to just, go for the full book, and hopefully people buy it, maybe word of mouth spreads.
Yeah.
Also, I also do recommend at certain shows, check out the local bookstores. Like, just say hi and just introduce yourself. You don't have to pitch them anything. Just like, hey, I'm kind of local here, or hey, I have this book. Would you guys be interested in selling? Because there's a lot of small mom and pop shops that will like, yeah, gladly. Especially if it's supporting local writers or artists, they love just supporting local because they understand that. And hopefully that could be a good foundation to expand any kind of fan base.
another thing you mentioned was like having a first taste. So just to bring up something real quick is like a promo. So these are my cards for my comic strip curls, and then on the, the front has just like a nice illustration. Then the back has 4 samples of comic strip, and then my information on the bottom. And this is a cost-effective item, like I don't have to spend that much money, and I can distribute them, and in hopes that somebody might be like, oh, cool, like I want to look at more, or at least they have my information, something like that. I would definitely highly suggest to do a little promo piece like that for yourself. Yeah. Any other questions? I did remember, I'll get to it one second. I did remember one other convention that's kind of localish that I didn't mention was AwesomeCon in Washington, D.C. at the D.C. Convention Center. I will say the name is AwesomeCon. It's not called Awesome Comic Con. Some people, complain about that because they're like, oh, it's not about comics, but it never was. But they do have a comics component. But the cool thing about AwesomeCon is that they also have a science component, and NASA is there, and National Science Foundation is there, and like also there. Then they have a gaming area. They have people that are just like us making our own comics, but they have people making independent games. which is really cool too. They have a whole bunch of other stuff, and that's why it's called AwesomeCon, because everything's awesome. But it's not only about comics. I just want to emphasize that, because some people have in their minds, like going into it, that it's going to be a Comic-Con, but it's kind of like everything that's really awesome. So I have a good time at that show.
They also have like just like prose authors as well, like people actually just selling regular books as well at those shows because they want to get into the market as well. So it's not just like artists, writers. It's kind of a mix of everything for those kind of cons. It's a pop culture con. It's kind of whatever is popular at the moment. Those kind of conventions are always kind of hit and miss when it comes to marketing. So kind of do the research on some shows, because some shows may cater to the fans you want, or cater to the content you provide. So, because you don't want to be stuck at a table and just no one, just all the traffic just passing by, and you don't sell anything, and you kind of feel like kind of bummed. But it's like it's the nature of the beast on some of these shows that they're meant to get all the celebrities or get all the nice high-end books, or person that's writing for Marvel or DC, like, oh, they have a big movie coming out, they're going to promote all those comics. So they'll push for the bigger stars.
Yeah, and there are some big stars to compete with, because you could have like Chris Evans somewhere there, and then somebody's already spent like, I don't know, like $195 to take a picture with Chris Evans, and then they're gonna come by your area and be like, I already spent my money. Or like if there's a Playboy Playmate like 5 doors down, you know, and like you're like, how do I compete with this? You know, it's just like a lot going on at the circus. So there are some shows like that where it's the spice of life. You get a little bit of everything. That's the glory of going to every single show. And I do recommend, like after a year or two, try to check out all these shows, because they're all different. Okay, questions. Do you still remember it?
Yeah.
Cool.
I know literally nothing about printing, and I was just like, I don't know, like how do you print your work, or like somebody like getting into like cabling and stuff,
Yeah.
like
How
starting out.
how big is your book you want to make?
Oh, I'm just talking about like zines,
Okay.
honestly.
So
Yeah.
I would suggest, if you're gonna do small print run, there are some good options, like even at Kinko's, just do a regular black and white print, and then you can Xerox for 10 cents each, usually around that price. That's what I would do if you're just doing something small. But then at the same time, there are some vendors online that you can look for that will print up, I have actually this example. Like, this is a convention exclusive book of curls of the newer strips that aren't in this book, but I don't remember the pricing on it, but it's just something small and stapled together, saddle stitch. Something like this you can get printed online, just send a PDF. It wasn't that hard to do. Like I said, they just like ship it to me a few weeks later, and I'm like, oh look what's on my doorstep. You know, like it's actually pretty easy, because I remember many nights staying up the night before shows, hand stapling everything and folding things, which is crazy, but that's how you work. You know, I don't know how you guys do stuff like right before something due, like in college. So that's just the way those deadlines work. But something about deadlines that's important to talk about with shows is sometimes I like to have something new at every show. And sometimes it's hard to do, especially if they're back to back, like in the fall time, there's a lot of shows. So sometimes if it's even just like one sticker or one small thing, it's like, oh, this is new at the show. Just because after a while, people start to come back and they're like, what's new? And you're like, man, I haven't written like this full book. You know, I haven't had time to like do that in like 2 weeks. So we have a sticker. So something like that is kind of good to at least drive you forward. And also by signing up for the shows earlier, they'll drive you forward. Because it's all deadline driven. Professionally. It's one thing like in school, you're like, oh, I have this assignment, it's due on Thursday. Yeah, but then like when you actually really start getting deadlines professionally, there's some that I get that are the day of. They're like, we need this close business today. Okay, so, you know, it could be your best or not your best work, but they need it by the end of the day. And that's what is important. And it's always good to be on deadline. You can't really say like, I can't do it today. Like it just doesn't happen. You gotta get your work done quick. So So there is an element of being speedy, but the good thing about self-publishing is you're on your own schedule. But if you're working for a publisher, you might be under deadline. Any other questions?
I guess on the note that you were just talking about, did you work for a professional publisher? And if so, like, how did you strike that balance between like getting your own work done, like your personal stuff done?
I've done stuff for professional publishers, but not full books. I've done like Adventure Time with Boom Studios. Forget that's not my product, but I've done stuff with that and a few other things. But at the same time, I do like self-publishing because you do get to drive it forward yourself. If you work with a publisher, it's like working with a team, and you're going to have a lot of people telling you, oh, okay, let's run through it again, let's edit it again, work with an editor. And there's nothing wrong with that. I actually haven't even tried to do that. I've just been doing my own thing. And maybe that might be a direction in the future to aim towards, because I feel like it would be nice to have my books in the bookstores and I don't have to do it all by myself. So, and they're supposed to have a marketing team behind them and everything to help you out, but there's pros and cons to it. I know some people that have book deals and they still have a day job. So I like being honest with people and telling them that. Like, people think that like, oh, this person's doing well, like, and they are doing well. They have a book like at Barnes & Noble and you can see them, they're present, but at the same time, they have a day job. So that is the reality of it. No, not everybody has that, but some people do have the ability to not work a day job and be able to fully work on their product all the time, and that's very lucky of them. And a lot of people also might have a spouse that, you know, can have like healthcare under their spouse's work, and then they're able to not work and can work on their own stuff. So it really depends on how everybody is situated in life. So if you're a single person and you need healthcare, you might have to still hold on to your job and then also work on your book on the side. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working your regular job on top of making your book, because most people do work. Most people don't live the glamorous life of like having a huge publisher and not having to work.
I have another question, if nobody else has any.
Go for it.
Is there anything that can you recommend? Okay. Is there anything you recommend or don't recommend that if you're going to this fair, it's like really big? I mean, even this one is really small, but there's still so many tables there.
Yeah.
I mean, should you really worry about trying to do anything to make yourself stand out? Like you see some people with really complicated displays and stuff, or is that, what's your take on trying to stand out in the crowd, so to speak?
I think they should make an attempt to stand out. And I know it's been like harder and harder every year. I'll say from my angle, like, especially with shows like AwesomeCon, like you have, like I was saying, you have like these glamorous girls over here, and then you have like some famous person and the voice actor and this and that, and there's like a lot to see as a spectator that you just come to see the show. Like, I want to go out and see stuff, but at the same time, like, you want to have a reason for why people stumble upon you, because I don't think any of us in this room right now are like household names or something to be like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see like Angelina Jolie or or whoever. I don't even know if she does Comic-Cons. I don't think she does. But it's like you gotta find something that draws people in. And I know back Comic-Cons when things were first starting, people really did just not even have a tablecloth. They would just set up their books like this. And they're just like, here I am. But it's not like that anymore. People have like pop-up banners and all types of stuff. So just the marketplace, I feel like you do have to have something going for you. Yeah.
I mean, I figured that would be the answer, but I didn't know if it was like, actually, no, it's mostly like posting on Instagram and getting people to come over to your table, or like, I don't know.
No, I mean, like, it's like when you go to any store, like what gravitates you, or if you see a display in the window, I would more think of it as a storefront, just like little stores popping up. And because I know, go to the mall all the time, but I do know, like, if I look at holiday displays in the window or something, I'm like, oh, what's that? You know, and you want to check out and see what's going on. Or if you see a cool shirt, you're like, oh, I like that shirt. Like, let me go check that out. So you want to have a vision that's like something at the table. Some people do like pop-ups of their characters, like you can do a foam core cutout of your characters. That might be like, oh, cool character stand up. And that might gravitate somebody. Just like, or if you're at, you know, at the grocery store and you see like a cool display, I'm sure you've seen like, oh wow, look at that holiday, like a lot of holiday displays are like that. But you want to draw people in. I have used lights before too at one point. You can get like, now they have like the LED ones, but you can put it around the rim if you want to do something. Now, speaking of electricity, not all, you might have to pay extra for electricity.
Or have it like battery operated.
Yeah.
There are some that like you can plug in, like LED strips that you can plug into like a USB quality. And you can just get like one of those like phone batteries, charge your phone, and you can plug that sucker right in there and that'll actually light up.
Yeah, I personally think that that's kind of cool, like having some type of lighting. I didn't do that for this show. Like, for example, for this show, I have a spinner wheel, which, like, in one hand, it's kind of like, what? But the story behind my spinning wheel at Curl Studio is that we actually found that in our neighbor's trash. And I said, oh, a spinner wheel. It looks a little damaged, but you know what? We can make that thing work. And we got one little screw at Home Depot or whatever, screwed it in, kind of fixed it up. And we're like, hey, if somebody buys something, like I don't have enough funds to just give out things, because that would be very expensive, but if somebody buys something, they can get a free item. I don't know if it's enticing people. I know like young kids want to just spin it, and even if their parents don't want to buy something, I'm like, they can spin it. Let them spin it. That's fun. But I think it's a method that we just tried out in the past few conventions since we found it over the summer. So, you know, it's something fun that I guess would draw some people in. And I have gotten a couple reactions of some people be like, oh, you have to buy something, you know, and I'm like, oh, I can't give away everything, but I'll give them a promo card. But there are some people that just want things for free, especially at the bigger shows. They're just walking around getting free stuff, and that's fine. That, you know, that's what they came there to do. I guess they spent so much money just to physically be there. But you're gonna get, I guess, that reaction with having the spinner wheel, because people are disappointed that they're not automatically getting something. But I'm not like a big company that can just spit out merch in that sense. So I feel like giving something for free for someone in addition if they're buying, and they can buy anything. Even I have pins for $1. You can spend $1 and get a pin, but then also get a print that's worth more, you know? So I'm like, okay, just a little way of compensating to get people excited.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't spend like however much a spinner wheel costs. Like, it was free to me and I just happened to stumble upon it, so.
The stars align.
Yeah, so something like that might be a thing, or you can even maybe make your own, or, you know, you don't have to go out and spend like zillions of dollars on it, but lights are pretty affordable and stuff like that, or getting a nice color that represents your brand. You want to kind of brand yourself, getting a little cloth. It doesn't have to be that expensive. And then I'll find over the years, since we've been doing it for a while, we have more product. For the first few years, you might not have a lot of product on your table, which could be a good thing, because then people can actually focus and be like, oh, this is your book. Instead of being like, wow, there's 20 things here, what should I get? It might be overwhelming. So, but I would say like, that's why each show kind of adds something, add a sticker, add a pin, you know. But then there's the element of like just focusing on the comics, which take a long time to make. Do you guys agree with that? Like, does making comics take a long time to make? Yeah. And it's not necessarily easy. You can't just like pump this out all the time. So that's why in the interim, I make enamel pins. You know, I do pins and stuff like that. So buttons, stickers. It's something fun, and then some people might just want that. They might just only have $1 or $2, and that's what they want to take away, and they might not spend $20 on a book. Any other questions?
Yeah. What are both of y'all looking forward to right now?
Go for it.
Ooh, hopefully some pizza tonight, some dinner, food. Food is calling my name right now, but I'm actually, because Velocity Comics is staying open for one more hour, I'll probably just swing over there because they have a really nice selection of stuff, and I definitely want to poke my head in there. I'll hopefully not get too broke in there. Because DC Zine Fest is Saturday, and otherwise we still have money to pay for more things. But project-wise, like I said, I market for Super Art Fight, and that's we got a couple shows coming up pretty soon. So that means I'll probably have really less sleep marketing things, because basically just marketing shows and events kind of is a 24-hour thing, because there's always something happening. Either if it's changes, schedule changes, event changes, things need to be updated immediately because the speed of information is not instant. And if one person thinks a panel is at 3 o'clock and they moved it to 3:30, people will show up at 3, get disappointed that nothing's happening, and then the panel's done. Or not many people would show up for the panel. So information just has to be upkeep, and that's also something for like shows. Make sure like every person that's following you knows as much information about what's happening as possible. Even having maps or directions. That's what I loved when I saw people promoting the rice tables. They would have the map, and here's my table, and this is where I'm gonna be for 6 hours. And it's like this little circle, it's the map, and it has those little characters. It gives you an element of what that artist is as well, because they customize it themselves. And you have a piece of information, like, oh, they're at this table, and they'll be here at this time. And look, they have little designs and stuff. I kind of like their stuff. Maybe I'll get some stuff. And I'm just now rambling and hopefully getting to dinner. But other than that, events, there's plenty of events happening, like now, everywhere, and it's kind of have to make sure I don't burn out and take good care of myself during the holidays. Before more events and more events.
Yeah.
And more events, more shows happening everywhere.
Yeah. October is always our busiest month overall, and it's almost like a show every weekend or some event every weekend. So I'm losing out on the weekends, so there's no recovery time. So I will say, I also do a blood drive every year, and we're coming back from after COVID, but it's American Red Cross does the blood drive, so all that's taken care of, but it's overall called Cartoonists Draw Blood, so we're not like actually doing it, but it's the Red Cross, and it's in Fairfax this year. We've gone around to all DC area locations, and it's gonna be the day before Thanksgiving from, I don't remember the times, but it's most of the day before Thanksgiving. And basically, you come to donate blood. It's our way of giving back to community. And then a cartoonist will draw as a thank you, like a small little sketch for you. And then also, in addition to that, this year Red Cross is donating a pair of socks from the movie Elf to people that also donate blood. So there's like double incentive to go to it this year. But I'm glad that that's coming back after COVID, and we've been doing that for 10 years. So, and I organized that blood drive, and then we also have 2 books that are available here that are Halloween themed, and they're Cartoonist Draw Blood books that have the anthology from people that have drawn at the blood drives. And one is called Trick or Treat, and the other one is called Monsters. So we have 2 anthologies that were based off of that event. So that's another thing you can do to kind of promote yourself and also, give back as some type of community event. And that's the one that I've come up with, and I've been sticking with it, but I'm glad to have it come back this year. Because the past couple of years has a little bit quiet, but we figured it can come back this year. So that's coming up. And
I got one tip I want to leave. Volunteer at any show you can. That gets your name out, it gets you connected with people. Sometimes you only just have the energy to volunteer instead of attend. Most shows, if you volunteer, you get a 3-day pass for some shows. I know a Small Press Expo does that. You pick which day you want to volunteer, and then the other day you get your free pass. So, and then also, one, you get to meet cool artists and cool people volunteering as well. Maybe you will get stuck with Chris Evans, making sure, he goes to his panels, which people gotta do that. You gotta shepherd
Wrangle them.
these celebrities around. But no, volunteer is probably one of the easiest things you could do because every show needs volunteers. And also shout out to all the volunteers at Rice, doing the extra work today.
Yeah.
Because I know how shows like these operate and it can be chaotic in 1 minute or probably just the easiest Sunday you'll have. But it's just one of those things that these shows need volunteers and they always advertise like, hey, would you like to volunteer? Get a cool t-shirt, you know?
Yeah. Not only that, or you can just ask. If you haven't even seen them put out that call, you can always ask. And that's actually how I got started. I don't know if you know that, but I got started from volunteering at SPX. So I was a VC student, and one of my friends was like, you should go to SPX. And I was like, SPX, what's that? You know, like I've never heard of that. And so I went as a volunteer just because I didn't want to pay the $15. Because at that time, it's like, oh my God, $15? $20? You know? So I went and like, all I did was like check in people when they were arriving and got to know everybody. And then it actually took me 2 years. I thought it like the next year I was like, I might table here. But then I just wasn't there yet. And so I went another year of volunteering. But that year I at least had a small booklet of girl strips. And I was like distributing it just randomly to other cartoonists that I thought I liked their work. And I was like, here's my comics. So that was like an entryway for kind of at least introducing myself. And then the third year in, I actually did get a table. So it was a little bit of progress. And I look back on that now and I was like, oh man, that's like 3 years right there. Like that took the bravery to go there, but that's how it ended up. So, you never know how it's going to end up, but I do suggest, I definitely second volunteering. That's probably the best thing you can do, especially at this age. And also with everyone's budgets too. So yeah, and then work your way up and get to know people, get to know who runs the show, and introduce yourself and pass out flyers or little promos for yourself. That's what, the beginning steps of it are. And then in the meanwhile, just keep making whatever you can. And even if it's a little bit of progress, sometimes you might only have to get 15 minutes in. That's it. That's all you have for the day. And then just try to make more, as what you were saying with energy and just other stuff. I know everyone has stuff going on. You have family, you have friends, you have a social life, maybe. You have classes, you have other things to do. Everyone has a lot of work to do. So if you can just make progress at 15 minutes a day, be it writing or illustrating, at least it's something. So I would advise that at first. And then when you get really in the groove, sometimes you can just keep going. You're like, oh man, 2 hours just went by? Oh man, it's 4 a.m., I should go to bed. Stuff like that. So but best of luck to all of you guys. And thank you for coming to the panel. I really wish you the best because I want to see all you guys succeed. I want to see you tabling and I want to see you at all the shows we mentioned. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.